host a podcast, you know how frequently we all get these cold emails pitching us on guests. I got an email like this recently from a guy named Erik Jacobson trying to pitch one of his clients to be on the Berman podcast, my podcast, which you can check out below. I'll put the email up here. Because the cold email was so well done, I not only booked the guest that Erik recommended, but I actually reached out to Erik to have him on the podcast. And in today's video, I want to share a conversation that we had all about how to get booked on top podcasts. The first thing we talked about was the concept of a podcast tour.
I saw people executing the strategy of quote unquote like podcast tour. I didn't know that term at that point, but I had seen authors like literally appear through my podcast feeds on like 20 or 30 different podcasts over the course of 3 to 6 months. And I'm like, okay, clearly this is a strategy that they are executing. It's not just like haphazard. They just end up as a guest on a podcast. So I started looking into it more and I'm like, okay, I heard some people who had done it and said that it was the #1 channel for growth.
This was a huge strategy for us at Experiment 27 as well. And I've talked about that in past videos, how I've been on Entrepreneur on Fire and all these top podcasts. But if you can identify where your market lives, and if that is certain podcasts and you can get on those shows, it can lead to a bunch more customers. I know for us, there were maybe a dozen agency podcasts and we got on almost all of them. There were a couple we haven't been on, but those were ones where the host of the show charged guests like a commercial, which I don't support at all. Or am I just too cheap to test it? Next, we talked in depth about the pitch. How does Erik pitch a podcast tour to high-level prospects?
There's two main things that we do. One is we want to provide value to the podcaster. Like so many people pitch, and this could be for anything, but pitching for your business, pitching journalists, pitching podcasts, and all they do is talk about themselves or why they're so great or their list of achievements. What we try to do is kind of reverse engineer like what the podcaster cares about or what their audience cares about and how we can help like fill the void there and kind of weave in some credibility markers, but we're not really talking about ourselves or our clients. We're talking about the things that they can teach. And so it's just all about providing value to them and to their audience, and it's not about us.
We'll link down in the description to that exact email script as well. It's interesting because as a meta learning, as a whole, I found that people that cold email to be on podcasts usually aren't worth talking to. So hearing it from me, who's booked a bunch of podcasts with cold email, or from Erik, who's done the same, it's interesting to see it work. And it actually speaks a lot to cold email as a concept. Just because you wouldn't buy from a cold email doesn't mean the market as a whole wouldn't buy from a cold email or book a podcast guest or whatever. Erik helped Tim Ferriss write the book Tools for Titans based on his podcast. And so he knows Tim Ferriss, he knows some of these other people. And I wanted to talk to him about getting booked on large shows. So something like the Joe Rogan Experience.
What we do is we bucket them into small, medium, or large. Small, we categorize as 500 to 2,000 downloads per episode. Medium, 2,000 to 10,000. And large is anything above 10,000. And then you get into like super large, which is Tim Ferriss style stuff. And you're getting into hundreds of thousands. So, but getting on those extra large ones, that is sending a cold email pitch is possible. And we actually have had success with that in the past, but you've got to come up with more unique ways to get in front of them. A lot of them need warm intros. So if you can get connected with someone they know and going through that way, or if you can do some unique outreach, you just got to think outside the box on this and not be like everyone else. They're getting slammed with inbound. They don't have a problem getting guests. So you've got to find a way to stand out. And I think it just comes down to reverse engineering, like what they care about right now, and then seeing if you can help them with that.
The takeaway from that is there's no real secret to get on these huge shows. The way I like to think about it is when you're ready to get on something like the Joe Rogan Experience or Tim Ferriss show, it will happen. You'll run into them at an event, they'll be impressed by you, and you'll get on the show. While Erik says he's heard about 1 or 2 people getting booked on Joe Rogan with a cold email, those gigantic shows are the type where the host has to hear about you and usually reach out. But if you think about it and you have a specific strategy for each podcast host, you can most likely figure out how to get their attention. One of my friends was on Mixergy recently, and it's because he ran into Andrew Warner, the host, at a conference, and they just started talking about his life story, and it happened organically. If you really want to get on one of these big shows, you could do something like that. And then we talked about why those big shows aren't the best anyway, at least when you're starting out. You're more likely to embarrass yourself than you are to get a bunch of customers if you haven't done podcast interviews. So me and Erik talked about the reasons why small or medium podcasts are way better to start.
We, for the most part, don't pitch these extra large shows, because a lot of people aren't a perfect fit for the Joe Rogan show. You can't just be some random person. Like, Joe has specific types of people that he likes to have on, and so you just have to make sure you kind of fit that mold. And so we have kind of honed our expertise around the medium and large, and then from time to time we do go for the extra large, but those are not going to build you momentum. Those are going to be one-time hits. It's just hard to build momentum on these extra large shows because, number one, the amount of time it will take to close it will be several months, and then their content calendars are going to be probably 6 months out. So you'll do the interview and it might not air a lot of times for 3 to 6 months from that. And so it's just a longer game. What we found is better is to have like an engine of these interviews going out every month. And then once they start going live, you're having 3 to 5 interviews or more going live every month within the first few months. If you're just starting and you haven't done any interviews, do not pitch the extra large podcast first. Like, start smaller and work your way up.
Check out the video on how we booked a bunch of podcast interviews. I'll link that down in the description as well. And it goes into detail on how we did our podcast tour. Also, if you want the exact contracts we use for client calls, it cost us about $1,000 to put together. You can have it for free. That's down in the description as well. And if you really want to help the channel, I would love if you would share this with a friend or two. We're trying to hit 100,000 subs, so every share counts. And if you need help with your marketing, especially if you run a digital agency, check out experiment27.com. We'd be happy to find you more enterprise clients. Also, Erik's information is down in the description box below. Thanks for watching.